Hello, and welcome to Tuesday night's Hotline Live with Record Sport. My name is Daniel. I'm delighted to be joined by the wonderful Keith Jackson. Keith, how's it going?
I'm very well, Daniel. Yourself?
I'm right up for it tonight because we're joined as well by Record Sport's Ryan McDonald. This is an all-star occasion. How's it going, Ryan?
All-star occasion. Very nice, very nice. Yeah, not bad, lads. Delighted to be on the show.
Nah, listen, I'm up for it tonight, Keith. I'm right up for this. Let's do it.
Good, I like your energy.
Where should we start? Obviously, we've got the late Scotland squad's been announced.
I was there today at Hampden. Yep.
We'll be hearing from Steve Clarke on that a little bit later on. But as we've got Ryan on the show, I thought best place to start would be Celtic.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, off the park, it's been quite
as long as he's not going to go in a silent protest and refuse to answer any questions.
That's
for the first 12
minutes. That's a very good point, aye. Well, I mean, on the protests, actually, on a serious note, what have you made of them, Ryan? And I mean, do you think they'll lead to any sort of tangible change at all?
Well, I mean, obviously that's the intention. Look, for me, obviously it's the avenue that the Celtic Fans Collective, which is a group which involves the Green Brigade, the Boys Celtic Trust, various influential Celtic supporters, fan groups and fan media as well. Obviously, this is the avenue that they want to go down. You know, I think the thinking is there's silence in the boardroom, so we'll make it. You know, there'll be silence in the stands. For me, protests will always divide opinion amongst fans. You know, there's 60,000 fans at Celtic Park every week. And, you know, these silent protests, I can guarantee, will not be universally accepted. Not everybody will be on board with it. You know, there might be anger towards the board, but there comes a point where you have to consider if it's starting to affect the team. Now, 12 minutes isn't a long time. You know, there was a 12-minute Rugby Park protest where, I don't know, maybe 3,000 fans waited in the concourse before emerging into the stands in the 12th minute. Then at the weekend there was a 12-minute silent protest against Hibs. And yeah, it was a very eerie atmosphere.
Did you think it affected the performance levels, right?
This is the issue. This is the major issue. You know, with silent protest, I do think it does risk impacting the team. You know, it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. I think if you listen to Brendan Rodgers after both the Kilmarnock game and the Hibs game, even he admitted, you know, it was a strange feeling. I think Luke McCowan in his interview after the Hibs game as well said that he could even, you know, it was unusual experience for him because he could actually hear what his teammates were saying at the other end of the field. So it has been, you know, the players are noticing it. And I think Brendan Rodgers said as soon as the fans did eventually burst into life on the 12th minute, then the team got a lift from that. So against Braga on Thursday, it's going to be 29 minutes. That's more than double the time. So, wow. How that I just don't understand. For me, I don't necessarily agree with silent protests as the way to go forward with it, because as I say, I do think it does risk impacting the team, especially on such a huge European occasion. You know, against Braga in the Europa League. You know, Celtic will have real intentions of going deep in this competition, and by staying silent for the majority of 30 minutes, best part of 30 minutes, it's not going to do the team any favours. And the reality is, you know, without the Green Brigade in the corner and the Boys Celtic on the opposite side, you know, Celtic Park's like a morgue at times. There's no other kind of singing sections. So even if some punters don't necessarily agree with it, I can't imagine there'll be much atmosphere regardless.
Davey in the comments, and if you're watching, you want to let us know your opinion, please get involved. Davey says, I thought we played the best game of the season so far without scoring. I think he means against Hibs at the weekend. There will be no silence from me. My grandson is looking forward to his first match in the Europa League. And Marzuno says, I wish my kids would do a silent protest. We talk about the Europa League. You mentioned it there, Ryan. Obviously, Europa League was seen as one area that the Celtic fans might boycott. I mean, a 6:15 kickoff against Braga on Thursday. I have no idea. I have no idea what the crowd is going to be.
That's going to be the problem, isn't it? 29 minutes to silent protest, lads. How's anybody going to tell?
I know. That's a good point.
Rangers had the similar problem last week. They can't give tickets away for this game. I think there's available tickets in every section of the ground, apart from what they call the North Curve, isn't that right?
Yeah.
So I find it interesting, Ryan, and I'm interested to know your perspective on it. Obviously, you're saying that you don't necessarily agree with it. I've noticed that some fans groups have been saying, well, media would say that the media are on message because the board want this message out. That the media are being used to put the board's message forward. I mean, it's nonsense. I can say that categorically. But I am interested to know from the perspective of performance level, is this going to impact on? Did it impact at the weekend? Because I'm seeing conflicting versions of that. I'm seeing some people say, as we said there, one of the comments was that Celtic actually one of their better performances this season, just struggled to put the ball in the net. That's got nothing to do with volume coming from the stands. But I just think it all feeds into a pretty bleak narrative. And I guess the fans' argument will be in that, Ryan, well, yeah, that's what we want it to be, because we need the board to take action and we need them to listen to us, even if we're being silent. The fans are clearly committed to this course of action.
Yeah, I mean, the 12-minute protest at Rugby Park was picked up by Sky cameras, and it was discussed in the days leading and the days afterwards. So the Celtic Fans Collective, that is what they're wanting from this. They're wanting headlines. They're wanting this to headlines to be made until eventually the board do break their silence and respond to that open letter that was sent. Which will be 29 minutes, hence the fact it's 29 days, hence the fact it's a 29-minute silent protest in Braga, against Braga. So that'll be 29 days on Thursday since they've sent that open letter, and it's not really been addressed. Of course, there has been that car crash of a statement, plus obviously there was the annual report where Michael Nicholson particularly took accountability for the transfer market failings, and obviously failing to qualify for the Champions League. So there was some accountability taken from the boardroom. However, it wasn't a direct address or a direct response to, I think there was a 7-point letter that was sent on behalf of multiple fan groups, which obviously involves thousands of fans as well. So I think, to be honest, I don't think this one's going to go away. I think it's a result of repeated kind of failings in the Champions League and the transfer market. Celtic fans have been in this movie before. They're clearly annoyed and angry at missing out on the Champions League group stages, a competition they've been gifted over the last 3 years. As a result of being crowned champions, and obviously likes of Rangers boosting the coefficient as well. So they've had an open goal at this Champions League for 3 years, and the one time obviously a qualifier emerges, then fans were celebrating when Kyrie Amati was drawn out the hat. You'd think it was a cert that Celtic would go through, but they were ill prepared again in the transfer market, and it's the 5th time in a row that Celtic have failed to qualify via the Champions League qualifiers. And I think now it's obviously fans have had enough, and they're wanting change. They're wanting better communication, and they're wanting a bit of transparency. And I think as well, actions speak louder than words, and that's something I do agree with. I think the board do have to come out. They do have to improve their communication with supporters. Brendan Rodgers has even acknowledged that as well, Keith. He acknowledged that at his press conference on Friday, and I think he acknowledged it before as well, that is something that Celtic have to improve upon. So yeah, I think, to be honest, Dermot Desmond, he was at the Ryder Cup at the weekend, wasn't he? So I don't really think it'll be balling him too much. It's more Michael Nicholson and the other directors, and obviously Peter Lowell, who'll be in the stands at Celtic Park every week, that will be in for an uncomfortable afternoon. But yeah, in terms of the wider picture, I don't see this going away anytime soon.
But Ryan, here's the thing with Michael Nicholson, right? I don't know how long he's been in there now as chief executive. He's been on a silent protest all this time. Let me tell you something. If the Celtic fans think they've got problems trying to get communication from Michael Nicholson, they should try sitting on this side of the fence. It's impossible.
I mean,
the guy has been an empty vessel. I'm sure that he does. He knows what he's doing. He's a smart, intelligent man, but he is not a communicator. He has got no wish for a profile. He doesn't want to step forward, and he's been the invisible chief exec his entire time there. And I think that is part of the problem, and particularly purely from a PR perspective, which is obviously, you know, our side of the game, during that kind of abomination of a transfer window there, where were Celtic? Where were they in terms of, you know, trying to communicate, trying to get messages out there? We said after the event that, can't remember who, one of the many strikers that were linked in transfer deadline day, and it was portrayed on Sky Sports that he'd chosen Stoke or something over Celtic.
Fofana, yeah. Charlton.
Yeah, that's it. And yet, 24 hours after the event, 48 hours after the event, we start getting slight briefings that, well, hold on a wee second here. What actually happened was Celtic did their due diligence and they were unsure about certain characteristics, whether or not he'd be a good fit. So this was a Celtic decision to walk away from that. Why wasn't that being briefed out? And so I've got great sympathy with the Celtic supporters in terms of trying to connect, trying to get some sort of information out the board. I'm just not sure that silent protests, you know, look, do you know, I'm old-fashioned, Ryan. I used to go to football games when there wasn't such a thing as a singing section. That used to be called an entire stadium. You didn't need to wait on a certain group to tell you what songs were getting sung at what point and what match.
But in fairness, Keith, the 1940s was a long time ago.
Must have been bouncing back then.
but listen, it's up to supporters to act. You know, nobody can instruct them or tell them this is what you have to do. There might be some Celtic fans that fundamentally disagree with it, that fear that by doing this, the team performance level might suffer, results might suffer as a result accordingly. Well, it's up to them then. Generate your own atmosphere, because that's what used to happen. It was not all that long ago before you had singing sections and ultras and all this. The atmosphere inside Scottish football stadiums back then, let me tell you something, boys, a wee lesson from history. It was fine. Atmospheres were fine. It was never a problem. But these singing sections or ultra sections have been created, and they seem to determine, you know, what the atmosphere is going to be and feel like inside a stadium. And I'm not sure that's for the betterment of atmospheres around football in general.
Yeah, I mean,
when Celtic were getting to Seville, I know that was 22 years ago now, but they won, didn't they win a FIFA award for best fans in the world? They didn't need the Green Brigade then or any singing section.
I think it's just down to a new generation of fans now, and obviously there is this kind of the new ultras phenomenon these days. Now every club in Britain, or at least Scotland anyway, has got an ultras group, and to be honest, they do improve the atmosphere, and I think, you know, a lot of them have been brought in to because of, you know, the dull atmosphere at stadiums these days. You know, I think the Partick Thistle fan group behind the goal at Far Hill, for example, you know, I think if you speak to Mark Wilson, they've made such a huge impact, and made, you know, Partick, you know, going to Partick Thistle an exciting place to go and watch football.
Steady.
No, well, so I mean, that's just one example, but, you know, as I did say at the start, I think it won't be universally accepted by the entire stadium, but I think there's just a reliance in these ultra groups and these singing sections to create the atmosphere. And, you know, other fans just, I'm afraid nowadays, just probably won't be getting involved in the singing. So it will last until 29 minutes, unless there is some sort of, you know, resolution between now and then. But I very much doubt it.
We've got plenty of comments coming in on Celtic, and please let us know your thoughts if you're watching at home. But Keith, the Celtic board, they really don't help themselves. They don't read the room particularly well, it seems. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw the...
Yes, Daniel, and I meant to speak to you about this.
Go on.
Well, I mean, you're the young gun. You're supposed to be the creative influence here. I looked at something that I think you're about to refer to. I can't help thinking that Hotline Live has missed a trick.
the Keith Jackson merchandise.
No. You missed the point, right? We've got a Swedish guy, our producer. His name's Henrik. Where's our merch?
There he is.
Who doesn't want that in a t-shirt?
The heartbeat of the hotline.
The essential, and people don't even think that he's real. He is real. Henrik is real. He's Swedish, and he's our producer. And I want some merchandise.
It'll be flying off the shelves.
The Hotline Henrik collection.
By the way, talk about reading a room. So I actually think that I saw some stuff knocking about earlier where Celtic fans were almost congratulating them. This silent process protest is starting to work. You know, they're not ramming merchandise down our throats anymore. Also, Celtic 1 hour later, buy your new Henrik Larsson collection. That's I don't know what they were thinking about. That's you know, you mentioned reading the room. Do you know what? See, in the middle of all this, Celtic, that's probably going to antagonise people. Why don't you just keep it and just put it out a little bit closer to Christmas time when people are looking for good ideas? The Henrik Larsson collection, little Santa Claus touch, whatever. Putting it out right now at a time when your support is mutinous and complaining about you trying to milk them for every single penny, it's madness. I don't know who signed off on that. Probably the same person that signed off on the statement.
As I've said, there's been more merchandise than signings this summer. And there's the latest one to add to the growing list. Yeah, that went down well on social media. I did laugh at some of the replies. I can't lie.
Well,
I think our fans wouldn't do that with our Henrik.
No, definitely not.
I think that'd sell out.
Why in a heartbeat?
We'd only probably get about 5 of them, but still sold out.
Look, the sentiment that you guys are putting across about Celtic shared by a lot of the people in the comments. I know we need to let you go in a second, Ryan, but before we do, I'll run through a few of these. Marzuno says, we want the board to have a vision for the club. They seem to be happy with maintenance. Paul says, it's not just bad PR at Celtic. The whole club seems dysfunctional in all departments. This one from, this is Davey again, says, glad Celtic didn't make it into the Champions League. We'd be getting gubbed every game the way the board have left us. And incidentally, it's still 0-0 between, Real Madrid have just scored against Kairat Almaty. It's 1-0. So there you go. Craig says, as a Celtic fan, I back the sack the board protest, but Rodgers has to do more with the team we have. We still have a strong squad to score against other Scottish clubs. The failure to do so was on Rodgers. And I know Pal Gianni says, 45 quid a ticket for the Roma game, hoping for a supplier to take me or my old pal Keith.
A supplier?
I don't know what he means by supplier.
I hesitate to think.
Let's not inquire any more about that.
Interesting new topping in the pizza, though.
But definitely feels like the Celtics, that, like you said, Ryan, this isn't going away anytime soon.
No, and I think one of the viewers there was right to raise a point as well, that what is the ambition for Celtic? When is the last time that Michael Nicholson, as the CEO, came out and spelled out his 5-year ambition for Celtic or his 10-year ambition for Celtic? I mean, I've said this before, but I mean, fans must have forgotten what Michael Nicholson sounds like, you know? I think the last time he actually faced the media was at Brendan Rodgers' unveiling in 2023. That's 2 years.
I think you might be right.
Well, he always gets rolled out for the AGM. That's his one appearance.
AGM,
that's his Christmas.
That's his Christmas. But in terms of a public briefing, I feel like that's the last time he's actually faced the cameras. So, yeah, I think there's got to change. There's got to be some sort of a change in the boardroom. You know. It's 2025. There's just so many ways of communication now. You know, we've got social media, video, newsletters, websites. There's just so many means of communication, and I think Celtic really need to modernise the way they communicate.
But Ryan, can I ask you a question before you go? Right, if Brendan Rodgers comes out, has a media conference, says that somebody within the football club, somebody that's been there for a period of time because it happened previously, was briefing against the manager to the media, and nothing happens in the wake of Brendan Rodgers making that allegation in front of a room full of cameras and microphones, what chance have the Celtic supporter got by you know, they can make all the noise in the world and it doesn't seem to register with Dermot Desmond. He's hardly going to buckle and faint at the idea of people being silent when his own manager is out there saying, guys, there's somebody in here briefing against me.
Yeah.
So it looks like a hopeless cause. I wish the Celtic supporters luck. I can understand their frustrations, but it's a silent protest falling on deaf ears. That's what effectively you've got here.
Yeah.
In the comments, Rangers is okay says silence does nothing. If you want to hurt a club, don't give them your dough. San Fran Celtic says all these CEOs and chairmen are just yes men. Desmond is the culprit. Some interesting points, but I think we have to crack on. Away from Celtic, Ryan. It's been an absolute pleasure having you in the Hotline Live.
Brilliant. It's always great being on the Hotline Live with you two gents, so thanks very much.
Sure I'll be pestering you soon to come back on any day now.
I'm sure you'll be on my chat soon, sooner rather than later. That's fine.
Ryan's
Thanks
away
very
for
much, Ryan.
29 minutes of silence now.
No, thanks, Ryan. Much appreciated.
Right, thanks, gents.
Cheers, Ryan.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
You mentioned, Keith, earlier on today, you were at the announcement for the latest Scotland squad. I think we can actually hear from Steve Clarke now. Shall we have a little listen to what he was saying?
Let's do that.
Let's do that.
Obviously a good camp last month, 4 points for 2 tricky away games. Listen, the squad's always difficult to pick because you've always got ideas about other players that are doing reasonably well that you might want to integrate into the squad, but no, this one was relatively straightforward.
Looking at your goalkeepers, Craig Gordon's back in, Zander Clarke drops out. What's the thinking there, given both haven't played? Well, Craig Gordon hasn't played this season, but obviously Zander's not played in the last few weeks.
Similar to last time when I spoke about the goalkeepers, none of the frontline goalkeepers for me really starting for their clubs. I've spoken to the people I need to speak to about Craig. They tell me that he's fully fit, he's back in training. He'll take part in a behind closed doors game today, I believe. So he's fit, he's the most experienced in terms of caps that I've got, so it just felt like the right thing to bring him back to the squad.
You said ahead of the September campaign that it wasn't too much of an issue, the fact that your goalkeepers and the squad in general weren't playing in terms of minutes, but it might change as the season goes on. Is that an issue for you still at the minute, some of the players not playing, or do you feel it's still early enough?
I think with the goalkeepers it's probably still a bit of an issue, but not, I mean, it's less than 3 weeks since the last camp, so not such a big issue in the September, October, November camps. I think the issue comes between November and March, and obviously in that November to March there is a transfer window and you never know what's going to happen. So in terms of the rest of the squad, I think most of them will start to get minutes at their clubs, which is good for us and obviously good for them.
How close was Lawrence Shankland getting in the squad, given Hearts, the way they're playing, practice scoring goals?
Yeah, always close. I know Lawrence very well. I know what he can bring to the squad. I just felt that the forward players I had in the last camp did well in the camp, did well in the games, and they've done well for their clubs in between, so I didn't see too much reason to change.
Kieran Tierney was one of a couple of players who pulled out injured after being called up to the last squad. Have you had discussions with people at Celtic to just see where his situation is at the moment?
No, I tend not to contact clubs. I watch the minutes that the players are getting. Obviously Kieran's been fit, played minutes, managed a full game against Partick Thistle in the League Cup, which is good, so no issues.
Feeling quite confident just given that he's had that 90 minutes. I think Brendan Rodgers said that'll be big for him psychologically. Do you feel that could be a big boost?
No, I think for Kieran, obviously he's on a recovery process, if you like, from having suffered from a lot of long-term injuries. He's working his way back. He was part of the last squad but had to pull out with an injury that he'd picked up in the Old Firm game before the last camp. He's fit now and he's back in the squad.
Oli Burke seems to be going along all right in the Bundesliga. I know you won't base selection off the basis of one game that he scored a hat-trick, but is he a guy that you've had in mind recently?
I think about all these players, people seem to think that because I tend to pick the same players more often than not, people think that I don't look outside, I don't look at other options. I'm always looking at other options because you never know when you're going to get injuries, suspensions, and when you're going to have to call people into your squad. So yeah, I got a lot of text messages when Oli got that hat-trick, and it was good to see because obviously he's a big talent. He was in some of my earlier squads. He sort of drifted a little bit over the last 5 years, but if he can find a home and settle down and play well week in, week out, then that'll be good for Oli.
In the comments, Keith Badger says, can't get a game for club, gets a call up, yet players on form can't get a call up. And I think that's that.
Is that a riddle?
So I was reading that out there, I thought, is that right? But I think he's just a bit got away with it, Badger. He's obviously mentioning the fact that Craig Gordon, 42 now, I think the only minutes he's played this season was in his testimonial.
Yeah.
He gets called up. Lawrence Shankland, 7 goals in 10 appearances. Can he get called up? And then it becomes even more confusing. Shankland, when he was going through that drought last season, was always in the squad. It just seems really odd.
Well, Do you know what? I'm going to back Steve Clarke on this one for a couple of reasons. If it was you and your life depended upon it, and you had to pick a goalie for a game that your life was on the line, Daniel, you going with Zander Clarke or you going with Craig Gordon?
Craig Gordon every day.
Well, you've answered your own question then, haven't you? Because Craig Gordon might probably still be at this point third choice at Hearts, behind Zander Clarke, who would be second choice. But I can absolutely understand why Steve Clarke looks at it and thinks, I need experience. I need the safest pair of hands that I can bring onto the pitch for games of this magnitude, because let's not get away from it. And I think a lot of people have been a bit turned off by Scotland again for this period. A lot of people's eyes haven't really get fixed onto this World Cup campaign, how short it is, how much is at stake. This is a World Cup. And I'm hoping that people catch the bug a little bit at this next international break, because we've got 2 games back-to-back at Hampden. We've taken 4 points from our first 2. Good point against Denmark and Copenhagen. A kind of surreal night in Hungary when we beat Belarus. But 4 points on the road is better than par. If we can take 6 against the Greeks and against Belarus at Hampden, then wow, what a position we are going into the final double header in November. And this is a place at a World Cup. We've not been at a World Cup since France 98. There's people out there can't remember seeing. So there's in fact, 90% of Steve Clarke's squad can't remember France 98. Yeah, I was there. I know what this is about. So yeah, to get the thought of getting to another World Cup final with Scotland is immense, even if people right now are more bothered about what's going on in domestic matters and all this. This is monumental, and we've got a real opportunity. And I think the Greek game is going to be really difficult. We will beat Belarus. The Greek game is a key game, and if we can find a way of winning that one, then I think we're in an incredible position going into the final double header. And by the way, the Greeks have got to play Denmark again in the second part of this double header. So if we could beat Greece, Denmark have already beaten them in Athens, and then they've got to go to Copenhagen.
Yeah.
Greece could be eliminated from the whole process here.
Yeah.
So it really, I can't emphasise how important these matches are and how close we are to doing something incredibly spectacular. No Scotland manager has ever qualified a team for 3 tournaments. And that's where Steve Clarke is obviously, his focus is on that now. He's got a really talented bunch of players. I'm excited about it. But I do think that this Greece game means everything. And for that reason, am I happy that Craig Gordon's part of that squad? You bet.
Don't get me wrong, me too. I love Craig Gordon. I just thought with him not playing, it was a wee bit difficult to understand. And just
but nobody's playing.
I know.
Are playing.
That's a good
so
point.
You might as well have Craig Gordon, because you know that when he's thrown into these situations, you know what you're going to get. Mm-hmm. So no, I don't see a problem with that. I do think there's an argument for Lawrence Shankland.
Well, yeah, I was going to come to that, Keith. We've got a lot of comments on that. Tom the Bomb, great name, by the way. Shankland should be first pick. Craigie says Shanks is Scotland's top scorer, should be first on the list. As I said, 7 in 10 games. We also did a poll on Record Sports Twitter page earlier on today, and I think it was a pretty resounding yes. 70% of people voted said that.
I'm no surprised, because I'm not going to argue with that. I'm surprised that Lawrence Shankland's not in that squad. You know, even if you felt that you probably weren't going to play him, why wouldn't you have him there available as an option? It might well be. He's only named 22 players in this squad. Look, what's the chances all 22 are going to be fit and available by the time we get through, you know, another couple of games at club level? There's every chance that somebody else will need to get brought in. I think Steve Clarke was making the point. He took a larger squad away to Copenhagen and on to Hungary last time round, because it's when you're away from home, it's easier to have the players travelling with you if you then need to rely upon them. Whereas while we're here, based for 2 games at Hampden, if you need to pull somebody in, then it's easier to do that. If there has to be changes, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Lawrence Shankland was one of them, if he did get a call up. But I totally accept. I do think it's a curious omission. Lawrence Shankland back on fire, scoring goals, instinctive goals, like the one he scored against Falkirk at the weekend there. That's Lawrence Shankland when he's not even thinking about it. He's just doing. And that's when he's at his most dangerous and most lethal as a striker. I think when he went through an awkward run last season, there was a few facets of his game that just weren't clicking the way you would expect him to, and that probably for a variety of different reasons. But what you're seeing this season is Lawrence Shankland playing off the cuff, doing things instinctively, and that goal against Falkirk was a perfect illustration of that. So for me, yep, I'm surprised that Lawrence Shankland hasn't made that squad.
I know we will talk about it a lot in the coming days.
Here's another one, by the way, Dan.
Go on.
See what I'm talking about how you're meant to be the creative. Or you're young and you're plugged into all this. While you were away, Rebel done us a right turn. I've just seen you've just put up a comment from Rebel.
There's Rebel, yep.
Yeah, well, he points out that you've been guilty of not telling people to put thumbs up, press the thumbs up button. So I was confused. I'm like, Rebel, I don't even know what this means. Rebel then very kindly goes out the way to explain that this is a good thing. It helps with algorithms. I don't know what Tony Bloom's got to do in. Daniel, why have we done this show for over a year now and you've never said, get your thumbs up?
Sorry, Keith, you're breaking up. But back to Scotland.
You're falling asleep at the wheel here.
No, you're right. And actually, everyone watching, if you could give us a thumbs up, a like, and follow
Apparently
us.
It's important.
That would be great, yeah. I mean,
Apparently these things matter, Dan.
I don't want to...
thumbs up matters.
I don't want to blow our own horn, Keith, but the numbers have been so good, I just kind of thought that's... But anyway...
well, don't say that. You're just giving people an excuse not to do it.
I know. Rebel, today...
Thanks, Rebel.
What's your gut feeling for the Greece game before we move on from Scotland?
I don't know. You know how sometimes you need to get closer to the game before you actually start getting a gut for it? And my instant thing is they gave us a bit of a going over last time at Hampden. They've got some very decent young talent. But I like the Scotland team, and I think especially in the bigger qualification games when results are needed. I look at the Greek team, it's decent. I look at our team, we've got players playing at higher levels than the Greece squad. Your McTominays, your Billy Gilmours, your John McGinns, your Andy Robertsons. And I know we've kind of become very familiar with this group of players, but we shouldn't take them for granted. They're operating at a really high level. We have a really strong first 11 and a bit of depth beyond that now. We have Lennon Miller's coming in scoring goals in I think it was the Italian Cup, wasn't it? He scored in. Your Lewis Ferguson's. These boys, we've got a real good core and we're adding bits of quality. I would love for Ben Gannon, Mick Gannon Doak to have been getting a bit more action at Bournemouth. £25 million move. You're wanting him to go down and, set the place alight. It's not quite happened yet. He's 19. It might take a bit of time. Hope his confidence hasn't been damaged by it. But I think that Steve Clarke has got the guys around. So you're hoping, because in a game like this, we might just need that little bit of magic, that little bit of something different, a game changer. Ben Doak, before he became Mick Gannon's son, absolutely terrified Big Guardiola over 2 games playing against the most expensive defender in European football, and he absolutely roasted the big man. And we need Ben Gannon Doak at that sort of level for these games. That was a very long-winded answer. I've just realised. Right now, I'm gonna say that we can get the result, but ask me that again a bit closer to it, because you know how it goes. You can maybe get a better feel for it closer at the time, but I see no reason. Packed Hampden, 90 minutes, effectively you're knocking Greece out the running for the thing if you can get this win. And that's massive in the context of the group, and it gives you a chance of finishing in top place and avoiding the playoffs. So look, there's so much on this game. I'm going to remain confident. I'm going to say at this minute in time, I quite fancy our chances. But as I said, let's see what we'll look like by the time that we get through another couple of rounds of domestic or European fixtures, club level, and see what the squad looks like going into the game.
Absolutely. Before we finish, Keith, there's a couple of miscellaneous questions that I think maybe we should touch on. We haven't talked about Rangers, Hearts, or any of the other Premiership teams for that matter tonight, but we've had some questions on it in comments. Should I throw a couple of them at you?
Go for it.
Willie Mercer says, the Rangers support are currently between a rock and a hard place, wanting Martin out and wanting Rangers to win matches. They know that the more the latter happens, the more unlikely the former will happen. We must, however, continue to support the team in the park with winning football matches. That's our collective aim. Russell says, need to get rid of Martin as a matter of extreme urgency. Need to give Barry, Neil and Dodds another go before they think about anyone else. If not, then my choice would be Kevin Muscat. Also need to get rid of the idiots that brought Russell Martin here in the first place. They don't have a clue. And just very finally, this is a bit of a long-winded one, but it's decent. Robert says, on top, but the statistics Hearts faced to win the league are staggering. Since 1960, there's only been 7 sides outside Glasgow that have won it in 65 years. First Dundee in 62, their greatest side. Last one to win was Aberdeen's great team in 85. Sobering fact, no club outside Glasgow has won the league for the past 40 years. Keith Jackson predicting Hearts as a serious league challenge to the Old Firm. More chance in the $500 million lottery. Hearts probably need to win more than 30 games. As his experienced reporter...
Jeez, what's this, 20,000 words?
As his experienced reporter and voice of reason...
and it's worse.
Craig Swan rightly answered, asked me after another 20 games. Similar answer he gave when Aberdeen were on fire early last season, then crashed. That's from a C Swan in... No, I'm not kidding. It could have been, though. It could have been.
What do you want me to say?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think Derek McInnes has made the comments today.
That anybody that thinks Hearts are involved in a title chase is stupid.
Pretty much, aye.
Cheers, Dale. Yeah, Swanee's the voice of reason. Look, I'm not going to temper it down. I see that Hearts have got everything in place. I think they look a lot more robust than Aberdeen did last season, even though they did get off to a flyer, and even though some of us might have been a little bit guilty of thinking that Aberdeen were going to be capable of sustaining it. This is a different Hearts, and it's a very, very different manager. And it's a manager that, unlike Jimmy Tilleen, knows what it's like to hang around in the top end of the Scottish League, knows what's required to stay there, and he's backed by serious cash and Tony Bloom and Jamestown Analytics. All the ingredients are there. It is early. I totally get that. One of the comments last night said, wait until after the Edinburgh derby. And then Hearts have I've got a game against Kilmarnock sandwiched in between Celtic coming to Tynecastle as well. That's probably a fair assessment. That where are Hearts? What does it look like after these 3 games? But my spidey senses are telling me they'll probably be in fairly decent shape. I think Hearts, and I know, and I totally get it, I totally understand, of course you do, why Derek McInnes is coming out and saying, oh, don't be silly, we're not even thinking about it. Oh, not at all. Let me tell you something, I know Derek McInnes, I've got a fairly good idea what he's saying inside the dressing room won't match up with what he wants to say in public or the message that he wants to put out in front of the cameras or the microphones. Derek McInnes took the Hearts job specifically for the reason that he wanted to roll around in the mud with Celtic and Rangers. And he felt that he had a chance of doing that at a club of Hearts stature with the setups they've got, the facilities, the backing from Tony Bloom. It's all there. That is the reason that Derek McInnes has gone there. And don't let him fool you into thinking anything else. I have no doubt about it that that's his ambition. That's where the mark is set just now. He wants to go in there and he sees himself as a disruptor. And he's got such a strong opportunity to do that this season at Tynecastle. So I'm not going to apologise for getting excited about what I think Hearts might be able to achieve this season. I'm not saying that I think they're going to win the league, but I'm saying I do believe that they have got a manager and a squad which is designed to give them the ultimate chance of going the course and distance. And they've also got a financial backer that if he thinks, come January time, that this is a possibility, he'll go again. Tony Bloom will go again in the transfer market. And you can be absolutely certain of it.
Tone in the comments echoes that, says signs are good. Bloom supposedly met Dell and promised money if required. It will be fascinating if they get to January and they're in a similar spot to they are now.
Look, as I said, Dan, it was a fair comment last night from one of the guys just saying, you know, we'll have a far better idea if Hearts are going to be robust enough, strong enough to go the distance this season after their next 3 games. Hibs at home, massive test, massive derby, with Derek McInnes' first Edinburgh derby. So there's a lot of ingredients going into that. Kilmarnock away, I think it is, which is Derek going back to Rugby Park, and he'll probably get a fairly hostile reception there. That's interesting. And then, of course, the ultimate test is Celtic going across the M8. Let's see what Hearts are at the end of that. I think that's a fair kind of period of time that you would then have to assess the thing. It'd be 9 league games into the season, but some major tests will have been negotiated, albeit Hearts would still then need to go to Celtic Park, and they would still need to go across the other side of Edinburgh to Leith. So these are all big things. But I think a picture is starting to build, and I see no reason. I don't think Hearts fans should be, desperate to curb their own enthusiasm here. I think there's a reason for them to be excited. They should be excited, and they should enjoy this for however long it lasts. Because, it's been a long time coming.
Absolutely. Whatever happens in the coming days and weeks, we'll be here to cover it on Hotline Live with Record Sport. I think for now, though, that brings us to the end of Tuesday night's episode. As ever, thank you so much for the comments.
Give us your thumbs.
Give us your thumbs up. And also, subscribe. If you want to subscribe on YouTube as well, if that's what you watch.
That's another thing you've not been asking me to do.
It's because, look, Grandad, I'll talk you through it off air, all right?
Okay.
Thanks very much for all the comments. Keith, it's always a pleasure.
Cheers, Dan.
We'll be back to do it all again at 6 p.m. tomorrow night. Hope you can join us then.
Thanks, everybody.